I watched all those Fellini movies I was supposed to have watched, and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm going to watch 90 Day Fiancé.
Have you ever met a fan with a Judd Apatow tattoo?
I have never met anyone. I hope that never happens.
Hi, Judd.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Sure.
I interviewed you for This Is 40 here in Philadelphia, and you had said at the time that the thing that surprised you most about being 40 was that you and your wife still have the same arguments that you've been having for years over and over.
Yes.
How has quarantine life enhanced that general idea, if at all?
I just sit here all day long writing This Is 50. That needs to come out in 2022 because This Is 40 came out in 2012. Yeah. I write it now. I shoot it in 2021, put it out in 2022. This is the time frame. If I do it, we'll see if I do it. But certainly, there's plenty of fodder for that movie happening right now because I'm here in the house with Leslie and Maud and Iris, and it's a roller coaster of emotions.
Wow. Well, the King of Staten Island is loosely based on Pete Davidson's life. In writing this movie with him, how did you find that sweet spot between real aspects of his life and fiction?
Well, basically what we said when we started it was that it wasn't, autobiographical, that it would mainly be fictional, but emotionally truthful. In real life, when Pete was, about 15 years old, he started doing stand-up comedy. So he's actually a very ambitious person. And this character is a version of Pete who never really found his passion and suddenly in his early 20s isn't really going anywhere. So it's a bit of an imagining of a more lost Pete Davidson.
But what are you going to do? Are you going to get a job or are you going to leave the house?
I'm going to open that tattoo restaurant.
No, like for real.
It's never been done before. I looked it up.
You had said that this would be Pete's life if he had not found comedy. What would your life be like now if you had not found comedy?
I can't even imagine it because I found it so early and I have so few other interests. I guess I could have been a tennis instructor. That's my only other interest. And I only play tennis like twice a year. I guess I might have become a teacher, which would have been great. I try to speak to classes about film and writing. I have a master class. So maybe that's where I would have gone.
Given you were interested in such sophisticated comedy at such an early age, could you enjoy Saturday morning cartoons or the other, lower brow comedy that we enjoyed as kids?
I was all lower brow comedy. I don't know. I still feel like I am. When I was a kid, we would watch cartoons all Saturday and Sunday morning, but also a lot of Abbott and Costello movies. There was a fair amount of Abbott and Costello. There was a lot of monster movies when I was a kid. The 4:30 movie, we would watch Godzilla and Mothra. That was a big part of my early life. I loved the Marx Brothers. Never really watched the Three Stooges, as I was all about the Marx Brothers. And then when I got a little older, Saturday Night Live was on. I found SCTV used to be on at 1 a.m, and I became obsessed with that. Monty Python suddenly appeared on PBS out of nowhere. Like, what is this weird show? And then, in my youth was the glory years of all the Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis, John Landis movies, Steve Martin and Belushi and Richard Pryor. So I grew up in a great era for being a comedy nerd. But I certainly didn't have a high taste. Even now, I have my Criterion app on my Apple TV, and I'll be like, should I watch all those Fellini movies I was supposed to have watched? And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm going to watch 90 Day Fiancé and go to sleep.
Oh, 90 Day Fiancé. It's a good season, too.
You know what? They're all good seasons. Let's be honest. That show works.
Getting back to the movie, Pete Davidson's character, Scott, is an aspiring tattoo artist. He's not necessarily found his groove in being a tattoo artist. As I understand, you don't have any tattoos, correct? Yes. But I have noticed just through like a very simple Google search that there are a lot of people who have gotten tattoos of Seth Rogen from your movies, and a lot of tattoos of like the 40-year-old virgin poster. Have you ever met a fan with a Judd Apatow tattoo?
I have never met anyone. I hope that never happens. I haven't even seen many tattoos from the movies. Although when we were trying to figure out what type of tattoo artist he was, we went online and we looked at tons of tattoos. And one thing we found was there are an enormous amount of tattoos of one of the stars of our movie, Steve Buscemi. People love tattooing him in all sorts of ways from tons of different movies. So I think that's kind of badass.
The last time you directed your daughter Maud in a movie, she was just a teenager, and now she's an adult. How did that change the dynamic of directing her at all?
Well, the last time I directed her was when we did This Is 40. So we shot that in 2011. So it was more like the Truman Show or something. I was manipulating my children into fighting with each other and trying to get cameras rolling. And there were a few, great scenes where she melted down, but I just had to get her to melt down. One or two of the scenes were some pretty incredible acting from her, but a lot of it was improvisations with her sister Iris. And they were so funny and so interesting that it felt very alive. But since then, she's been on the TV show Euphoria and Hollywood, and she was in a great movie called Other People that Chris Kelly made. And she's just done a lot of work. So now she knows what she's doing. So I have to deal with her as an actress who is very aware of how this should work. I can't just manipulate her the way I used to do. And she was great because she plays Pete Davidson's sister in the movie. And she's the one character who, has her act together, and she's really smart, and she's heading off to college. And she's the one who tells him the truth about who he is and the problems that causes other people. So it's a really fun dynamic because all their scenes, they're having these great fights.
We're all really huge fans of not only Euphoria, but Maud as well. Like everyone I work with, we love the work that she's doing. There's nothing more awkward than sitting down and watching a sex scene with your parents. Do you all gather together and watch Euphoria together?
Well, luckily, she plays the good girl.
Right.
At least in season 1. I keep saying, I think that changes over the years, but for now, she's the good girl. And, we love watching the show. It's an incredible show, Euphoria, on HBO. Sam Levinson does a ridiculous job. It's very imaginative and visual. When I watch that show, I always think this show does all the things I'm not good at really well. And I think she's having the best time. And it's great that she's on a show that people are so taken with. And then Hollywood was fantastic as well. The Ryan Murphy show.
Mm-hmm.
We just finished that. So, she's lucky she's getting to work with a lot of very impressive, bold filmmakers.
It's funny, you working with your daughter. I worked with my parents at a restaurant for many years in my teens and early 20s, and it was a big mistake. It didn't always go very well. But watching this movie and watching Pete become a waiter and deal with these customers, I get a little PTSD. I still have dreams, nightmares that I can't get to my tables on time 10 years after. Did you have restaurant experience when you were younger? Did you work in a restaurant?
Oh, yes. My parents owned a restaurant on Long Island in Syosset called Raisins Restaurant in the Woodbury Commons. Still a very hot location, the Woodbury Commons. And it was, like American food, like chicken parmesan and steaks and lobster. And once Billy Joel went there once. And I was a dishwasher, and then I was a salad man. So I just made salads all day long. Even though at that point, I don't think I'd ever eaten a salad in my entire life. And I loved it. And then for a long time, I was a busboy and a dishwasher at the East Side Comedy Club, which was in Huntington on Long Island. And that's where Rosie O'Donnell started. Eddie Murphy used to play when he was a kid. And that's how I learned about comedy. I was 15, and I just wanted to watch comedy. So I got a job at a comedy club just so I could see it.
One of my favorite moments from The King of Staten Island is this moment between Pete and Steve Buscemi in the restaurant where they're all hanging out. And Steve has this very heartfelt moment with Pete's character. And I was struck by the fact that we know that Pete's father died in 9/11, and that Steve, who was a firefighter, searched for survivors at Ground Zero. And I was kind of struck by this scene because it felt really like Steve as a human having a conversation with Pete as a human rather than characters. And I wondered if you got that sense or if any of that was intentional, but it just was such a special moment in this film.
Well, we knew that, we were talking about a lot of real issues for Pete. And one of the main aspects of the movie is how a young person processes their father having a job where he's willing to die for other people. What does a kid make of that? How does it affect him for the rest of his life? And we thought that Steve Buscemi would be a great voice for explaining to Pete what that type of sacrifice is about, and acknowledging that it does, create trauma for a young person, and that he has, compassion for him as someone who suffered because his dad made the ultimate sacrifice. So from very early on, we thought, if we could get Steve Buscemi to be in this movie, we knew it would be very powerful. And he's one of the great American actors, and he just does such a beautiful job because he's a very loving person. So when he talks to Pete and he's trying to explain it to him, it's a very, very meta kind of moment. You do get the sense that it's not a movie anymore, and it really is two people connecting. And there's a bunch of moments like that in the movie for Pete.
You've been making films for quite some time now. You've been in comedy even longer. Have you found that what is funny has changed since you started, and how do you evolve with the changing face of comedy over time?
Sometimes I feel like it's changing and I don't know where I fit in. And then I usually just think, well, there's the thing that I do, and I'll just keep doing that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of very bold, innovative comedy. And then there's, something that I try to do, which is just to be grounded and emotional and real and go deep and find a way to be funny in examining the human condition and all the things that people struggle with in their lives and trying to grow and trying to survive. And that's, usually the spot for me. I also, I love broad comedy. I love comedy just for comedy's sake as well. I'm very proud to have worked on Mess with the Zohan and Walk Hard and things like that. But most of the time I'm trying to talk about how hard it is to just be a person and get through the day and make your life work. So I don't think too much about what makes people laugh. I try to watch everything and hope I'm not slipping. But I always think about bands. A lot of bands, they do their best work when they're in their 20s, and then it's all afterwards for the rest of their lives. And you go, they must think that they're still good. Somehow they're losing, contact with something important. But then I'll think about Scorsese, and, he's doing Wolf of Wall Street in his 70s. And I think, yeah, you can still be good. So I try to focus on that and not get too anal, because there are people coming up with new ways to be funny. It's like music, like new sounds, and that's great. And hopefully there's room for me as I, get more decrepit.
You find a lot of ways to infuse authenticity into your films, especially with this movie, casting people who are close to Pete, friends of Pete, shooting on Staten Island. I imagine it's a very family-like atmosphere. I mean, your literal family is in the movie.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the authenticity that you've put into this film?
Well, I talked to Pete about it. We really wanted to capture Staten Island. So Pete was a producer on the movie as well as a writer. And when we did location scouts, Pete went on all the location scouts with the production designer, and he showed us all the cool spots and told us, what we should consider. He was very, involved in making sure it was all authentic. And I think that made a big difference. We didn't go shoot it in Queens or the Bronx and say it was Staten Island. We tried to be there and really soak up the feeling of it. And Pete was involved in every bit of casting and, all the details around us. So I think people will get a lot out of it.
Thanks again for hanging out. And I'm counting on This Is 50. I want to see that happen.
Well, I need the encouragement. I've got an outline, but I really can't write unless people tell me they want to see it. So, just tell me, all you people out there, just tell me, write it. And then I will do my best.
We'll mobilize the fans. We'll get it going.
All right.
Thanks so much, Judd.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care.
Because you can't get to the theater, we're bringing the theater home to you with Xfinity Movie Premiere.
I want to become a real tattoo artist.
Your work is mad inconsistent. Obama ain't right.
You ever think about putting on the jacket?
Our brand new service that lets you watch all the latest movie releases from the comfort of home. The King of Staten Island. Available now.
Hey, thanks for listening to all this. You're one of the few people who treat me, like a person.
You're welcome.
Just say Xfinity Movie Premiere into your voice remote to bring the theater to you.